Let him take over for a little bit, and I'll interject as I need to move forward here. So let's get back to it. This is going to be a lateral view of the scapula.
So lateral view of the scapula here, guys. These are our pieces of anatomy that we have to know. So A, we have the acromion right here. B, we're going to have that coracoid process. That's that landmark we're going to have to be able to palpate. C down here, we have the inferior angle of the scapula. D up here, the scapular spine. And E, we have the body of the scapula. And as you can see here, all that's going to make this nice Y shape for that lateral scapula.
And yeah, y'all see how the shape does drastically change when we put the patient in a lateral view. This will be a lateral the actual lateral scapula exam. It does, as he said, make that distinct Y shape. These anatomies that are labeled, you see some that aren't labeled on the actual X-ray itself. A through E is all going to be critical anatomy to know in this particular view right here. Especially that scapular spine, which we can only see in this lateral view. It's that area on the back side of the scapula that I showed you guys, that little crest. You can only see it on the lateral. But do look at how the acromion and the coracoid change spots as well. The acromion's on the lateral aspect over there. Coracoid's more medial. And of course, the only angle we can see is that inferior angle. The other ones are superimposed. And when we look at E, that's going to be our borders superimposed. So we're going to call that the superimposed bodies of the scapula, or we just say simply body of scapula. We said both ways.
And you said that was D, or
Which part?
the superimposed?
These will be the scapular spines. They're labeled for you on the side here.
The inferior scapular spine. The superimposed portion here, that's the body of the scapula.
Oh, okay.
And make note, y'all see how the humerus is pulled away from the scapula? This is distinct for that lateral scapular position. We want that humerus out of the way. So what we do is we have the patient grab the top of the shoulder to get that humerus out of the way.
If the humerus isn't out of the way, is that a different position?
It
Like
is,
an
yes. We'll go over that. That'll be a trauma view that we're going to talk about. So you can actually take your scapula and put it on its side like this, if it's on your table. You can see that nice little Y shape. It does make a very distinct Y shape. Some good profiles.
Yes.
You want to see that? You might do that? Do a little scapula.
Just for fun, this clavicle over here, what end is this portion?
A acromial end.
The acromion end. So that would be your AC joint right there between those. Good on this one?
Too far.
A little bit too far.
Like you skipped the slide.
I did. I went back.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. So anatomy review on this portion here. What's A?
SC joint.
SC joint, because we're at the sternal end. B? Sternal end of that clavicle.
So make sure on the A and B, guys, you're distinguishing between the joint and the sternal end of the extremity. You'll see how A is on that actual joint space. Can y'all see that? And see how B is on the actual clavicular bone. That's why I do the sternal end or sternal extremity. I just want to make sure y'all can see the difference. That's one you often mix up. It's the joint and the extremity.
How about C? Body of the clavicle, shaft of the clavicle. What about D out there? That would be the acromion end. That's still part of the clavicle. And then E? It's the joint, the AC joint for that acromion. Let's just add this in for fun. What's this part right here?
Coracoid process.
That's the coracoid. Yeah, there's a lot more we can add in here. Of course, if we ease the acromion joint, what would be this? That's the acromion. Yep. If we're asking for the landmark right here, what would that portion be? Glenoid cavity, glenoid fossa, which is housing for which part of the humerus? Head of the humerus. Very good. Now, if we were asking for this joint, what would that be?
Scapular.
Scapular.
All kinds of
Scapulohumeral joint.
Scapular-humeral joint. There we go. It's a little bit jumbled around. What we got? Scapular-humeral joint, or which one was it? Humeral scapula?
Yeah, use them either way.
Either way.
What's the thing you
Or
said?
just shoulder joint, you can say the shoulder joint as well.
What was your question?
What's the scapular humeral joint or the?
Or the humeral scapular, scapular? Humeral scapular joint or scapulohumeral joint, they're
Either way.
interchangeable. Yeah, interchangeable. If we're looking, let's see, yeah, right here, anatomical neck.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, can we see
The neck?
Surgical.
the surgical neck right there?
Wait, I thought
Can
that
we
was
So,
Which one?
the line that goes below it.
The line below it?
No, above, right there.
This
I
right
thought
here?
that was anatomical neck.
What you're seeing there, that is a portion of the head. What you're seeing through the ball.
That's the anatomical neck.
It's just
No,
like an
that's just a
outline.
portion of the head.
so, this.
Where's the anatomical neck?
So do you see how this is the anatomical?
A good point to bring up though.
No.
Any other anatomy you wanna add in there?
It's portions of the scapula. but- Yeah.
Okay.
Lateral
Yeah, so this right here, lateral border of the scapula. Let's see, what about
So this is
Basically.
there?
The way the arms just as you kind of make out this little indentation here. You'll see that?
Scapular notch.
Scapular
Scapular
notch.
notch.
Medial border.
Very good.
Trying to make it out there.
Is the lesser,
tubercle.
tubercle on this? If so, where would it be at?
Bottom.
So if you look right here, guys, this indentation, I'm sorry, this protrusion.
That's the
You see
greater.
protrusion here on the side, on lateral aspects, what would that be?
Greater.
It's that greater tubercle.
Uh-huh.
You see lesser, it's
It's like in the, okay.
You'll see it clearly in profile on the medial aspect. I got some pictures to show you as we move on. That's gonna look
Can I see the laser real quick? How would you know that?
Huh?
You're just moving so slow.
Sorry, I'm not feeling
It's
too
funny you
strong.
gotta pass out.
Yeah, I'm
Push myself
scared.
out too hard.
So
I'm
is this
okay,
portion
I'm okay.
here the lesser tubercle, and then this would be the intertubular vein?
No, so it would actually be higher up.
So what's this line then? Because that looks like it would match up with the
So
lesser
Donahue, you wanna
tubercle.
chime in here? This here, is this line, intertubular groove, is that,
Or is
No,
that the
we
lesser
can't-
tubercle?
so we're not able to see it here because it'd be superimposed on this
Inter-
position.
Intertubular groove is actually a little superimposed right here.
Right. So those grooves are gonna be more so, towards the head of the humerus.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the right.
The
Or
right.
the left, I'm sorry.
Yeah. They'll be more superimposed on the actual head of the humerus then, not as left. So now we're gonna go over the scapula here. So remember we have those three borders of the scapula, the superior, the medial, and the lateral.
I know why I put this in here. So, put this in your notes, guys, there's some alternative names on the borders. For that medial border, it can also be called the vertebral border. Why do you think it's called that as well? It's close to the vertebrae of the spine. Then you have the lateral border, also called the axillary border. Why do you think that's called? It's close to the axilla, which is the fancy way of saying your armpit, right? Armpit. And then one more alternative name to that joint. I apologize I didn't mention this. I think Jay actually said this, if I recall. It is also called the glenohumeral joint.
Oh, it is? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
My apologies. There's another alternative name for that joint, guys. Just write those down in case you see them used in that fashion. That axilla, very important point to remember as well. Axilla is that fancy way of saying armpit. We use that quite a bit for a lot of our positions throughout X-ray. So again,
No,
I'll say axilla.
I was
Armpit's the
thinking-
relationist term.
No.
no, her role.
Any other questions?
Right.
Right.
So, is the glenoid cavity and the scapulohumeral joint, are they not the same thing?
They are not.
Okay.
So When we say scapulohumeral joint, we're talking the actual joint, the union of the humerus and the scapula. But this actual indentation here, see how there's a little hole? We're talking about that as a landmark, or the surface on that scapula, it's called the glenoid fossa or glenoid cavity.
Choked on the saliva.
So landmark, glenoid fossa, joint, scapulohumeral joints. Good question, because that's very commonly confused.
So we can go over some more anatomy here, guys. Let's try these borders. E here, what border do we have?
That's the
Medial.
Vertebral, medial border. G, lateral, axillary border. Can we make out the superior one here? It's kind of superimposed on everything.
What are you going to?
Does it fall under the second rib?
You can actually kind of make it out here, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think, Mr. Donahue?
Superior border, yeah, it's very hard to see on that
Very hard to read.
X-ray, but
It would've
it's
made it out.
approximately right there.
Let's see, what about this other anatomy? What about A? It's the acromion right there. What about B?
That's whole corner.
Yes.
This portion.
That's
Neck.
whole corner.
That's the
The
neck.
neck.
The neck.
Good job, Moses.
What about C? Anybody see what C is
Superior
referring to? The notch?
And there's some kind of fossa.
Yeah, that would be the notch, correct? C.
Yes, yes.
That's the notch.
Very hard to see on that X-ray as well.
Is it scapular notch or superior notch?
Superior notch.
Scapular notch.
Scapular notch?
Scapular
You know,
notch?
superior angle.
Angle and border.
Oh, Jesus.
Should have viewed a little more. That's not fun. What about F? Down here.
Inferior angle.
Inferior angle. We already went over G. H.
Glenohumeral joint? Or glenoid fossa?
If we're asking for the landmark, it's the what?
Glenoid cavity.
Glenoid cavity, glenoid fossa. If we're asking for the joint, scapulohumeral joint, scapular, glenohumeral joint. I think we didn't go over D.
Second rib?
So that's actually two things, and I know we
Two
hit
things.
this earlier. Yes, it's second rib, but it's approximately where that superior angle would be located. That one's very difficult to see on this X-ray. So either of those answers would technically be correct.
So,
That's a good one to review.
superior.
Know that image right there.
So this is one that we went over before, the lateral scapula. That's how it looks when the patient's positioned. That is for moving that humerus out of the way to avoid it being superimposed on that scapula.
So that's a
And
PA.
That is a PA position,
The projection.
or projection, my bad. PA projection. So we see that nice Y. Those are really, those are so hard to perfect in clinic when you guys get there.
Kind of shooting blind on those. You'll hear every tech under the universe say, "My way always gets it every time. This is the best way to get this X-ray." So everyone's got their own version of doing this exam. Ideally, you'll see.
You'll find it, but once you get one and you see that nice Y, you're gonna feel so proud of yourself. Let's go over some more anatomy on here. We get all A. What do we have?
I'm gonna say,
It's
I'm gonna
this.
say core cord.
No, that's the.
It might be the acromion.
It is gonna be the acromion. That is the acromion there because remember it's on this lateral. You have to kind of remember where they fall in here because the position's gonna switch up a little bit. But what about B?
Core cord.
That would be the coracoid there. And D. Sum up this portion here.
There's the only view we can see that
The
anatomy.
spine.
Scapular spine.
Scapular spine.
We can only see it on this view.
Going down all the way here, this portion E.
Body of the scapula.
Body of the scapula, superimposed body of the scapula, correct. And all the way down here at C.
Inferior angle.
Inferior angle of the scapula.
I have a question for y'all. Is that X-ray optimal?
No,
Why not?
no marker.
What else?
She clipped the, I mean, I will say she clipped the inferior angle,
She
but.
did.
They did, yes. Actually, I mean, quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
So you never want to, you need to repeat that to include that, for sure.
Is there a reason why it's so bright?
That's probably because that's a film x-ray for one,
Oof.
and the technique is quite poor. The reason I know it's a film is because this is what we call a blocker. On your old school film x-rays, you used to take your cassette and you flash it under a little identifying, it's called a flasher. And you would put the cassette, it would shine a little light on it, and it would mark the patient's information right there on the film before you shoot the x-ray. So, film x-rays, obviously, I mean, look how much better y'all have it now. Technology's come a long way.
Technique was pretty bad too. You can see it burnt out over at the top.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, believe it or not, that's considered pretty good for a film x-ray.
Unfortunate.
And also, she actually scanned the cassette with the wall. Why did she do that? She said something about the Wi-Fi. The cassette has Wi-Fi. She told me that she
Wi-Fi?
was trying to.
Cassette has Wi-Fi.
Probably the sky plate, the digital plate, right?
I am not sure on that, I'd have to see the technology, I've never
They
heard of
do.
cassette having
I was like,
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
They have Bluetooth
I
to
know they
connect to
scan
the
so
computer.
identify.
Or maybe the battery?
Yeah, it's like,
No, but at that time,
Yes,
It's the same,
they
pretty
don't
much similar
use
to the
CR
portable.
cassettes at that
yeah,
time.
it pretty much like on the board was.
Mhm.
It's like that white cassette,
For
right?
Wi-Fi?
Yeah, the sky plate.
She probably meant that.
Sounds like something from the Terminator.
Oh yeah, those things are like what? Those things are like $80,000.
Mm.
Yeah, the cassettes, like those digital cassettes, just the cassette is like $80,000.
Don't drop it.
Don't drop those now.
Do we have this yet?
The lateral scapula, you should have a
I
lateral
know we have
scapula view.
this one, but I was saying
It might be this case.
slightly different.
That's
Wait, if you break it, do we care for the cassette?
Students do not know.
I do not want to find out.
Yeah, I'm out of this program.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to know the answer to that.
They're gonna hire you, but like significantly lower than everybody else.
Every month it's charged.
Moving on, guys, we're gonna look at the inferior superior axial shoulder view. We can break this down. Inferior superior, we're going from the inferior portion shooting through to the superior portion of this anatomy.
This one.
Axial, do you guys know whenever we go axial, what are we saying?
Armpit.
Angle.
Oh, angle. Oh, I think so.
Thank you for angling the two.
Angling the
This is
two.
a very important view to know, guys. It's one of our trauma things. You're gonna learn how to do this tomorrow on Thursday. But put this in here because you can see it's a vastly different looking x-ray. A lot of that anatomy we just talked about is gonna change positions quite a bit. So go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, so as you can see, a lot of the anatomy is going to be changing up. The coracoid process is going to be up here. The cranium is going to be superimposed partially with the head of the humerus. Glenoid fossa is going to be right there. You'll be able to see the glenoid connecting with the head of the humerus there. Surgical neck, as we know, is going to be below the head of the humerus. And on this position, we'll be able to see the lesser tubercle in profile up top here.
And that's the one I want you to put a star on, guys, because this view in particular, the key aspect is that lesser tubercle is going to be at the top of your film profile. Like a little hill, a little mountain. Now, I apologize, I lied to y'all. You can see the spine of the scapula on this x-ray as well. That's another way you can see the scapular spine. This is an alternative to that wide shot, by the way. So if you have a patient that's in a trauma situation, you can't get a proper wide shot, you'd opt for this one. So we do trauma Y x-rays on shoulders. This method and another method I'm going to show you primarily check for dislocation of the humerus from the scapula. So as you can see, this would tell us clearly if that humerus has become dislocated from the scapula. Looking at that, is this humerus dislocated from the scapula? Yes or no?
The image on the left?
Okay, image on the left.
I think so.
You think it is?
I think so.
It's actually not. It's normal. That's the way it's supposed to look. If it's dislocated, you'll see that humerus clearly out of the socket. It'll be too high, too low, too lateral.
Up here.
So
It'll be in
that
a funky
separation is
position.
normal?
That separation
That's the
is-
joint space. That's that synovial joint space that we talked about. So actually, it's not invisible. There's actually a capsule in there, synovial capsule. You just can't see it.
Where all
on the
that
X-ray.
fluid is stored? Why doesn't it show up differently then if there's fluid in there?
Because it's actually invisible unless we add contrast to it.
Oh, okay.
Which, if you've seen those arthrograms at the hospital yet, the arthrograms are gonna inject contrast into those joint spaces. They'll do shoulder just like this, and you'll see it light up that joint space specifically. A lot of people that go in with joint problems, they'll get those done to see if they're missing any fluid, they need some kind of restoration to the joint.
You said this is a trauma view?
This is a trauma view, yes.
So if somebody dislocated the shoulder, can they raise their arm like this, laying down?
Not, maybe yes, maybe no, you kind of have to shoot as they lie, but you can still get that view even if their arm's kind of just neutral. Still shoot through the armpit.
Right?
Why is there a chromium at the bottom? Like is that not pointing at
Why is there chromium at the bottom?
Yeah,
Because
right.
look at the patient, how they're lying. Look at how you're shooting the x-ray. Where's the acromion located? You're seeing the acromion through the heavy humerus. It's superimposed because you're shooting through the armpit. If they're laying down, you're going through the armpit or the axilla. It's just the way it's gonna lie. Yeah.
We got this one. Any other questions? Anything? Anything you want to add, Mr. Donahue?
That covers it.
Is there a more common dislocation to, like, related to this view? Like anterior, posterior? or-
Honestly, I've seen it in every direction.
Okay.
I've seen it go medial, superior, inferior, lateral. Medial, yes. Yes, it can go medial. It can go into your chest, which would be obviously very painful. Yes.
Mine was,
So,
mine was anterior.
what it would do, Jay, is it become dislodged. Go back to that other picture. It would become dislodged and shift forward, like in front of the scapula. Yeah. That can happen. Whoa.
Whoa!
Having fun?
All right, let's start over again.
Mr. Donnie, would they do like an open reduction for that, or
It
closed?
depends. Some things just pop it right back in the socket and not do a surgery at all. Just depends on how severely it's dislocated and or if it's fractured. So really it's the fractures they're gonna have to do the actual surgical procedures. They have to put rods in there to bring the pieces together. But your dislocations too, they can get it right back in the socket.
Yeah, but just do clove reductions on those for the most part.
You don't need for member reduction.
I saw one of those.
You do.
Show it to you.
It was an
Should
old
hurt,
one.
dude.
Joints of the shoulder girdle. We've gone over these quite a bit now, but just to review them. Major joints we have. At the clavicle, we have two. We have our sternoclavicular joint, which is articulating with that sternum. AC joint, acromion-clavicular joint, articulating with the acromion. And our scapulo-femoral joints, connecting the humerus and the scapula.
There's only 3 joints to worry about this chapter.
Great chapter.
That's the fossa.
Glenoid fossa. That would be the landmark. So let's see.
Just showing those joints on
Yeah.
the X-ray.
These joints are identified. I think we've already gone over the anatomy here for the most part.
By the way, all the joints of the shoulder girdle are synovial and diarthurial. They're gonna have different movements, as you'll see in the next chart, but they all fall under synovial and diarthurial. All 3. There you go.
And then the movement types. Scapular femoral joint, that's our ball and socket joint. We have a lot of greater freedom of movement for that joint. Sternoclavicular joint is a planar gliding, as well as the acromion-clavicular joints. So you said diarthurial for all of these?
Diarthurial and synovial for all 3.
Wouldn't the scapular femoral be? Oh, because it's really.
So the 2 joints, they're
they are considered fully movable. Yes.
Going over some positioning, we have our AP proximal humerus.
So yeah, this is not gonna be the full positioning of these positions, guys. This is where I want y'all to pay attention to the anatomy. These next 3 slides are gold star slides of critical info that you need to know. The registry will ask you about one of these positions, they may ask you about all 3, but there are some very serious points that I haven't read that you must master on these, because they'll give you just a plain x-ray like on the right, they ask you to identify what's the position, how will the epicondyles be positioned, what would be in profile, things like that. So as we go through these big gold stars, write these down, take pictures, whatever you gotta do. These next 3 slides are very important.
This is essentially just a really tightly honing
For this position.
When we're looking at the shoulder.
Correct.
Okay.
So, AP proximal humerus, external rotation. When we rotate externally, our epicondyles are going to be parallel to the IR. Now, let's see, yeah, parallel to the IR, which will put our greater tubercle in profile. So as you can see up here in this image to the, was it left to left? Greater tubercle is going to be identified by A. B, does anybody have an idea of what that would be?
Lesser.
That's the lesser tubercle, which is superimposed on the humeral head there.
Now watch closely, when you go to this next slide in a second, how that's gonna change. You'll see the difference.
So now we're gonna go internal rotation, so we're turning our hand inwards and putting our epicondyles perpendicular to the IR instead of parallel. So when we do this, the greater tubercle is now superimposed and the lesser tubercle is gonna be in profile, as you can see here. So you're gonna be able to see it peek out beneath there, and the greater tubercle is gonna be superimposed on the humeral head. So very important thing to know, which position is gonna show which tubercle in profile, and where our epicondyles will lie as we move through those positions.
Y'all following so far?
Wait, can you go back to this?
Yeah.
Y'all see that lesser tubercle, how it's very predominantly protruding medially? Y'all see a difference between that external and internal? I'll show you all of them side by side in a second, to get a better visual.
Thank you.
Everybody good?
But make sure you don't focus on one or the other, guys. You need to know both those facts. What are the epicondyles doing? What are the tubercles doing? Each of these views.
Oblique proximal humerus. Epicondyles are going to be 45 degrees to the IR. This would be more of a neutral position for the patient.
This would be your trauma view, by the way. Your
Trauma
shoulder.
view.
One of your trauma views.
So if the patient's not able to move or manipulate their arm frame even, neutral position. Epicondyle is 45 degrees to the IR. And in this position, neither one of the tubercles are actually going to be really seen. They're not going to be in profile. They're both going to be superimposed on that humeral head. So you can see A and B, both not really visible in this position.
You said they're both superimposed?
Yeah. They're both superimposed upon the humeral head.
Quick question. Whenever, like, are you guys gonna show us, like, whenever I'm with top and then you put a order in, they just have, like, wrist and then next will be, like, review. Like, are you guys gonna tell us what that is, or we're gonna just learn it as we go?
So the reason we don't tell you what that is because that can change per facility. But most commonly a 3D wrist would be your PA oblique lateral. That's your most normal protocol. But we don't say that's the end all be all because some may say, no, I want a PA lateral. I want a corner deviation. It's one of my 3D. It depends on what the doctors want in that facility. So you have to learn that as you move to facilities, as you work through facilities, what are the protocols for your particular 3Ds. Most commonly, we'll teach you what the routines are. When we say routine exams, it's just what's commonly ordered. So we say like a routine wrist is a PA oblique and lateral. That's your most common 3D wrist that you would see.
But if you ever want to know the protocol, you can always ask the techs, and if not, you can always ask them where the protocol book is at. Like at Bentoff specifically, I know down in Maine, they have a list of all the protocols for everything that they order. Because it's going to be different at different facilities you go to, and even at Bentab, something that's ordered down in Maine, they may order it differently up in Bonefront. So, but definitely, if you haven't seen them, maybe just ask where the protocol books are at, and just take a look through it just to kind of get a general idea. Because it's very helpful to see as well, because they have pictures in there.
Would it also, would it also tell us whether or not they are okay to use digital markers in the protocol book?
Visual markers?
Because I had a text say like that's what we have to do, as
Mhm.
opposed to like
Interesting.
that's just what we do.
No, I mean, I think most places prefer you to use anatomical markers, if I'm like actual
Yes.
physical markers.
At least they should.
Yeah, I don't know what that text's talking about.
Okay.
But yeah, it won't say anything about the markers in that
Okay.
book specifically. Always use your physical markers.
Please.
I'm not trying
Please
to.
put it on your registry.
I wasn't trying to
please.
use it.
When you graduate, you can do whatever you want, but for the registry, always use anatomical markers.
Alright, so these are those three positions, three positions side by side. Let's see if we can try to identify those. Let's see, what are we seeing here on A?
External.
External rotation and
Why?
anything? Yeah,
Explain
why?
You can see the greater and profile.
Okay, what would be the greater tubercle? What's it labeled as? A, very good. And what's B labeled as? Lesser tubercle, very good.
So
Okay.
think of other ways that question could be asked as well, because I could be a sneaky boy, as Gio would say. I could be a sneaky boy and say, what tubercle is superimposed? Or I could say, the lesser tubercle superimposed, what position would that be?
You
So
said
I got
if the,
sneaky there.
if the lesser one was superimposed?
The lesser tubercle superimposed, what position would it be? It'd still be external. I'm just wording it differently. So know where each of those pieces of anatomy are. Oh, okay, the epicondyles are parallel. What position is it?
Neutral.
That's still external. So that question we asked three different ways right there. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. That's not me being sneaky, that's me preparing you for how the registry is gonna be sneaky.
So let's review B a little bit. So let's break it down here. What are we looking at in B? What's in profile here?
Lesser tubercle.
The lesser tubercle. What's in that's in profile. What's superimposed? The greater tubercle. That would be
Yeah, the internal.
internal medial rotation. Where are epicondyles on this? Perpendicular to the IR. Very good. And then what's A labeled as? Greater, and B, what's that labeled? Lesser tubercle. Okay. And moving on to C, what can we see in this here? Both are superimposed. Yeah. Neutral, where are epicondyles? 45 degree. What is our hand gonna be out, in?
It's gonna be on the side, cause it's like
Neutral
a
position.
prone view.
Very good.
So you're kind of seeing the vast amount of questions that can come from those three images alone. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So don't focus on one aspect, but you're looking at all the anatomical aspects for those images. What anatomy is where, what's it doing, what's in profile, what's perpendicular, and so on, what's superimposed. How's the hand resting?
And just for fun, what's this here on image B?
Coracoid.
Coracoid. What's this part? Acromion. Okay. Just making sure. A couple of review questions here. What is the lateral thickened end of the scapula, or end of the scapular spine called?
You said lateral thickened.
A.
Lateral thickened end. Scapular spine.
Yeah, A.
We're saying here A. A. It is A, the acromion.
Here's another way of asking that question for this. So if it said the medial thickened ends,
Bless you.
that's the coracoid.
Not the coronoid?
Mine would be the
Said
coracoid.
medial.
That's an elbow.
Where's the coronoid?
Elbow.
The elbow, right? See how tricky that is? Now, once again, this is not me being mean, guys. This is what the registry is going to ask. It's the kind of question they're going to ask you. And that's very tricky because look how similar those words are. You know, we're familiar with coronoid, you just learned that. That's a completely different area of the body. In fact, you know, those anatomical geniuses back in the day got really, really lazy with the labeling because you have a coronoid in your mandible as well. So you have a coronoid, coracoid, coronoid. Not complicated at all, right? And they couldn't call that something else, like really?
Is there something that you have like that we can remember that would be all confused?
I just go noid, coid, noid. That's how noid, coid, noid, in that order, top
So
to
there's
bottom.
only one C, and that's C goes.
The C's in the middle, the shoulder.
Next question here, the scapular notch is located on the gaze superior border.
Yes.
That is correct. Superior border up at the top.
Why is C incorrect?
C is the opposite.
Well, I mean,
C is wrong.
There is no notch there.
There is no inferior border. There's an inferior what?
Oh,
Angle.
angle.
Once again, see how tricky that can be?
Please don't be that tricky like that.
Look, I don't want to be, guys, but that's what the registry is to be. Trust me, I'd love to give you all these easy questions, but I gotta prep you. That's where we'll stop today. So we'll stop there, guys. That ends the anatomy section. So hopefully you're not as mind-numbing as the previous chapter. So what we're gonna do the rest of the class, guys, is go ahead and work on your worksheets. And if any of you wanted to check your grades, I'll do that for you real quick as well. You have a question, Cody?
In the book sometimes, and even the workbook, it mentions some of the muscles that attach.
Yes.
Is that something that we have to be careful of?
So, great question. The good news is, you don't have to worry about that for x-ray, but once you get the CT and MRI, that's when you'll start talking about all that.
Okay.
Yeah, so for x-ray, you don't need to worry about muscles.
Okay.
Thankfully. A little less to worry about. All right, let's see. We're still playing the 9 points.
She rounded.
Let me take a look. Step away for a second because I gotta pull this composition stuff up. Hang on. That might just been,
I was like,
you see that stuff up there, might be a typo on my part.